This is one of those moments where the NFL world quietly tilts on its axis, where a few carefully chosen words suddenly expose fractures that were never supposed to be public, where a superstar quarterback, a Super Bowl-winning head coach, and one of the league's most respected organizations find themselves staring into a mirror. They didn't plan to look at this early. Because when the conversation shifts from game plans and playoff hopes to whispers about sleep habits, leadership fatigue, and internal frustration, you're no longer talking about football alone. You're talking about trust. You're talking about control. You're talking about whether a franchise built on stability is suddenly wobbling under the weight of unresolved tension. And when Adam Schefter's name enters the conversation, when words like blockbuster, trade, and Lamar Jackson start sharing the same sentence, the league doesn't just listen, it holds its breath. This isn't gossip. This isn't noise. This is the kind of storyline that changes legacies, restructures organizations, and forces uncomfortable truths into the open. Because once the idea is out there that Lamar Jackson's relationship with his head coach might be fraying, once the suggestion is made that this could all end not with a fairy tale, but with a fracture, there is no putting that genie back in the bottle. Every practice rep, every injury report, every sideline glance suddenly carries weight. And that's why this moment feels so explosive, so unavoidable, so heavy with consequence. This isn't about one bad season. This is about whether one of the NFL's most electric talents and one of its most respected coaches are drifting toward a collision course neither side can stop. What ignited this entire firestorm was a report suggesting that Lamar Jackson's relationship with John Harbaugh may not be as airtight as it's been portrayed for years. The suggestion that Lamar has fallen asleep in meetings, that accommodations have been made around his schedule, that there's a level of frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Harbaugh, doing exactly what a head coach is supposed to do, immediately pushed back. He called the claims unfamiliar, insisted he'd never seen that behavior, and made it clear he wasn't interested in anonymous voices speaking for him. Publicly, it was unity. Publicly, it was loyalty. Publicly, it was love. But in this league, denials don't always end conversations. Sometimes they ignite them. Because as was pointed out, stories like this don't materialize out of thin air. Reporters don't stake their credibility on fiction, especially when they cover a team as closely as this one. And that's where the tension lives, somewhere between what's being said and what's being felt. This is why the timing matters so much. The Ravens are in a season that was supposed to be different. This was supposed to be a year where everything aligned, where Lamar was healthy, the roster was loaded, and the window was wide open. Instead, it's been uneven, frustrating, and filled with questions. Lamar hasn't practiced fully in weeks. He's been managing injuries. He's been in and out. And in the NFL, availability isn't just the best ability, it's the expectation. When your franchise quarterback is consistently absent, even for legitimate reasons, it creates uncertainty. It changes preparation, it changes rhythm, it changes trust, and that's where the tension creeps in. The conversation quickly turned from speculation to reality. The Ravens are running out of time. Their margin for error is razor thin. Every game now carries playoff implications. And the brutal truth is that if they don't find a way to win, if they don't salvage this season, the offseason won't be quiet. It will be loud. It will be invasive. And it will force decisions that no organization ever wants to make about a player of Lamar Jackson's stature. What made this discussion so compelling was the honesty from the people involved. No one sugarcoated it. There was an acknowledgement that Lamar is still one of the most talented quarterbacks on the planet, that he's still in his prime, that there are maybe a handful of players you'd even consider taking over him. But there was also a sobering admission that talent alone doesn't insulate you from consequences. Availability matters, consistency matters, leadership perception matters. And when a team underperforms, the quarterback, fair or not, becomes the focal point. The idea of Lamar Jackson being moved, even hypothetically, feels almost surreal. Yet it was discussed not as fantasy, but as a business conversation. If things don't turn around, if the Ravens miss the playoffs, if this season ends with disappointment, there will be organizational meetings where everything is on the table. Coaching staff, philosophy, direction. Nothing would be untouchable. That doesn't mean a trade is inevitable, but it means the questions will be asked. And in this league, once questions start, answers eventually follow. What makes this even more complex is the dynamic between Lamar and John Harbaugh. There is genuine respect there. There is history. There is shared success. But the NFL is ruthless. Sentiment doesn't override results forever. Harbaugh is widely respected, one of the best in the business, and yet even he isn't immune to scrutiny when expectations aren't met. Fans grow restless. Ownership looks for explanations. And suddenly stability becomes conditional. The discussion made it clear that if this season collapses, something will change. It might not be Lamar. It might not be Harbaugh, but it won't be nothing. And that's the part that should send chills through the organization, because when change becomes inevitable, control slips away, decisions get forced, leverage shifts, and narratives harden. There was also a striking acknowledgement of how difficult it is to replace a franchise quarterback. That reality loomed over the entire conversation. You don't just find another Lamar Jackson. You don't casually move on from that level of talent. But at the same time, you can't ignore the warning signs when a season slips through your fingers. This is the paradox the Ravens are facing. Hold on and hope things stabilize, or reset and risk everything. The final stretch of the season now carries enormous weight. Every snap, every injury report, every press conference will be dissected. If they win, if they claw their way into the postseason, the narrative shifts. Suddenly, it's resilience. It's leadership. It's overcoming adversity. But if they lose, if they fall short, the story becomes about cracks that were always there and a relationship that couldn't survive the pressure. And that's what makes this moment so gripping. This isn't just about football. It's about trust under stress. It's about how organizations handle discomfort. It's about whether success in the past buys you patience in the present. The next 2 weeks don't just decide playoff seeding. They may decide careers. They may decide legacies. They may decide whether Lamar Jackson remains the face of the Baltimore Ravens or becomes the most talked about name on the trade market. So as this situation continues to unfold, every word matters. Every quote is parsed. Every decision is magnified. And the NFL world watches because stories like this don't just end quietly, they explode. And if you want to stay ahead of where this is going, if you want to understand the power shifts before they happen, make sure you're subscribed, drop a like, and stay locked in, because this story is far from over, and the next chapter could change the league as we know it.